This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon on this July 3rd, 2019. Last night, July 2nd, I had a chance to catch Bryan Adams at the Bell Centre in Montreal as part of the Montreal International Jazz Festival. And, of course, the Bell Centre was sold out. About 18,000 folks came to see Bryan, and it's fantastic. Every single Bryan Adams show I have seen over the years has been fantastic. And this year, 2019, I will have seen 4 Bryan Adams shows. I've seen 2 in Montreal. I'm going to see one later on with Billy Idol on August 1st in Guilford, New Hampshire, and then August 6th in Syracuse on the 8-show tour. The Billy Idol and Bryan Adams tour is 8 shows. I mean, that is unbelievable. I love it. I'm going to go see 2 of them, but that should be an 80-show tour. I mean, that pairing, come on. I mean, if this was 1985 or 1986 and you said Bryan Adams and Billy Idol were touring together, that is an arena run, maybe even a stadium run back in those days. Anyway, before the show, I had a chance to catch up with drummer Micky Curry, and he, of course, started his career. Well, he started his career before Hall Oates, but for a while he was Hall Oates' drummer. He played on the H2O album, on Private Eyes, and he then decided to go sort of work with the Rookie, with Bryan Adams, and they did a couple of albums. Started off doing some Reckless stuff, and then, whoops, Hall Oates came beckoning, and he went off. But pretty much since 1987, 1988, he has been known as Bryan Adams' drummer. And he is absolutely, absolutely terrific. And a lot of musicians have called him in for studio work, including The Cult and Alice Cooper. And the thing about talking to him on July 2nd, 2019, it just turned out that we happened to be celebrating a couple of things. On July 2nd, 1991... Alice Cooper released the album Hey Stoopid that Micky plays on, and on July 2nd, well, in fact, not celebrating, but on July 2nd, 2019, The Cult announced a deluxe edition Sonic Temple release that is going to be 5 CDs, which includes a lot of the demos and a lot of the live versions and acoustic versions and different things, and of course, Micky played on that. Now, 2 other drummers had played on them, one of them being Eric Singer of Kiss. And in the interview with Billy Duffy that I did a couple of weeks ago, which you should go check out, by the way, he mentioned that Eric and the other drummer were great. No complaints. They played fantastic. But yet there was just something that the producer, Bob Rock, wanted in a performance, in a drum performance, and he just wasn't getting it, and so they went and got Micky, and he provided that, and I'm going to just call it swing for the lack of a better word, and all of a sudden Sonic Temple became, a temple. It became the album that everybody knows and loves. Anyway, so before this show, and I have to say, the choice of bands this year for the Montreal Jazz Festival, or the Montreal International Jazz Festival, have been exquisite. They had heavy metal band Voivod do a 5-piece brass quintet or a brass quintet thing, which was delightful. They have Alan Parsons, they've got Peter Frampton on his farewell tour, and then they had Bryan, and that is fascinating. And of course, they're using all the venues in Montreal. So if you haven't come up, do come up for that. But anyway, let us get over to Micky Curry. We sat backstage at the Bell Centre in the Montreal Canadiens press room, because why not? As I was wearing a St. Louis Blues shirt, and no, I'm not a bandwagon jumper. The shirt's about 10 years old. But I brought the Stanley Cup winning St. Louis Blues shirt to the franchise that has the most Stanley Cups in the history of the NHL. No, sorry, Toronto, it's not you. In fact, how many does Toronto have? Like 2? but none since I've been born. So I kid you, Toronto fans, I love you. Anyway, without further ado, from the Montreal Canadiens press room, it is the one, the only drummer extraordinaire, and I mean it, drummer extraordinaire, Micky Curry. We are speaking with Micky Curry, drummer for Bryan Adams, and has been for many, many years. And of course, he's been on many other albums by Hall Oates, The Cult, Alice Cooper, among those. So let's start off with playing with Bryan. You start off with Hall Oates. You play on Private Eyes. You play on H2O. You have all these very successful albums, and then you go sort of play drums on the Rookies album, The New Kid. Talk to me about that decision, and how did you get there, and what was inspiring about Bryan that you said, okay, I'll go give this a shot?
Well, to be honest, the first record I did with Bryan, the You Want It, You Got It record, was recorded a couple of weeks after the Private Eyes record. I was at Electric Lady working with Hall Oates on Private Eyes, and the day I tracked Private Eyes, Bob Clearmountain called me at the studio and said, I've got this guy from Canada I'm going to work with, and I'd love you to play drums on it. So we set that up, and it was literally within the same month.
Right.
I was working with Hall Oates and Bryan Adams. So the decision to sort of stick with Hall Oates and hit the road with them, whatever, to become sort of a band member, was Daryl just asked during those sessions if I'd be interested in touring. So, of course, it was a big deal. And, Bryan was, we spent a few days recording, and it was a blast. We had a great time at the power station, and I knew that hopefully I'd be able to work with him again on his next project or whatever. But, I had committed to Daryl and John, to Hall & Oates, and, I couldn't really take a full-time gig like that with Bryan. So, but I did start working all at the same time. It was March, I think, of 81, something like that. And, fortunately, Hall & Oates would be off the road. Bryan would be recording. I'd be able to go work with him on, subsequent records, and it all worked out like that. Great.
It really did. So talk to me about what was it about Bryan's music that attracted you and said, okay, I want to stick with this guy? Because, again, the success with Hall & Oates, you could have just taken those 6 months off and just gone on vacation. You didn't need to go and... What was it about? Could you see that, this guy's special. He can write a song.
Absolutely. Just the he had that. First of all, he's got an amazing voice, and that great sort of rock voice, and I love that. And I would be working with Clearmountain again, which to me was heaven, because he just knew how to get a drum sound, a great drum sound. And, he made those records sound the way they sounded. The songwriting was fantastic, with Jim Valance and Bryan writing all those great songs. And it was kind of how I wanted to sound. We'd listen to those tracks, and I thought, this is a great drum sound. They take sort of mediocre drum tracks and really make them sound fantastic. So, that was a tribute to Bob. But yeah, there was definitely something special about Bryan, and I knew I'd be working with him over the years. I had committed to Hall & Oates, and those records and playing with those guys is such a big deal for me as well. The R&B thing, which was always kind of my comfort zone, and just being out there doing those shows. We were touring all the time, and recording. We were always at Electric Lady, which is one of my favorite studios ever. It was exciting to be there, but it was always kind of it was a tough thing to not be able to go work with Bryan full time for me for a long time. So yeah.
So talk to me about the process of putting the songs together, because Jim Valance, when he puts the demos together, he's a drummer. Was a drummer with Prism. Came in with a lot of the songs already done with the drums. Were you told, imitate what Jim's done, or were you told, go do whatever you do? How did, let me put it, what was your creative input to the song-making process?
Yeah. It was kind of somewhere in between those two things. Jim's demos were so good. His drum tracks are so great. He's one of my favorite guys, and I learned so much by sort of following his demos and his parts, drum parts. So there were key things on some of those songs, I think, that they wanted to keep, some of the sort of fills and some of the feels. And so, each song was a very individual thing, and we would track, and I would, we'd listen to the demos, and I would play sort of along to what Jim had on there. Some of the stuff, some of the fills I kept, some of the, some of the grooves were very similar, but at the same time, I sort of have the way I play. There's a, whatever it is for me, to be comfortable with the track and, get through the song. So a lot of that was, also in there. You can't help it. You play the way you play. And, right. Fortunately, sort of that combination of things worked out really good. I can't give you any specifics. I know there were some drum fills on some of the early songs on the You Want It, You Got It record. I specifically remember Jim would be on the phone and he'd say, I'd really like to keep that fill, going into the the bridge or going into the guitar solo or, so little things like that. But for the most part, it was pretty much me playing where I was comfortable in the song and referencing Jim's demo stuff. So.
Now, I know we're going to run out of time, so I want to get some of the other stuff. But before I start moving along, Bryan Adams on Cuts Like a Knife.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that Lou Gramm of Foreigner is on the album. Now, at the time, Lou Gramm and Foreigner were it. They dominated radio. They dominated Much Music, MTV. Well, not Much Music, but MTV. Talk to me a little bit about that story, and did you get a chance to work with Lou? How did he sort of end up on Cuts Like a Knife?
I'm not sure how Lou ended up on Cuts Like a Knife. I know that I know Bryan had toured with Foreigner, so they probably became friends on that. I do remember that there was a day Lou came in, and we were all going to sing some gang vocals, and we were all about, 6 inches, maybe a foot from the mic. And Lou was about 6 feet away. And he was saying, and we were all just sort of, you just dumbstruck, gobsmacked. He was fantastic, man. He's one of my favorite singers of all time.
Oh, he's the definition of rock singer.
Absolutely, I think so. And he was so sweet and so nice. And I can't remember the song we were doing it on, but we were all just yelling these vocals, and he was singing this stuff from a mile away, cutting through everyone. It was really, really impressive, and it was really fun. And that's I have a very sort of specific memory of that happening, and that was at the power station. Fantastic. But I love Lou, and I think he's amazing. Definitely the legend. Deserves to be.
Deserves to be. So now we're recording this on July 2nd, 2019. July 2nd, 1991, Alice Cooper puts out Hey Stoopid. But before I get to that, the Cult today have announced a deluxe reissue of Sonic Temple. 5 CDs, all the demos and all that. Talk to me about your participation on that, because they used 2 drummers before, one of them being Eric Singer of Kiss, and Billy Duffy in an interview with me said, well, they were great, but it wasn't there, and Mickey he had it. Talk to me about coming into those sessions and listening to those tapes and saying, okay, this is what I hear, and playing on that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love Billy, and I love Ian, and I loved working on those records. It was a blast. We really had fun. Billy's really fun to work with, and he's an amazingly good guitar player and songwriter, and he's really gifted, and he knows what he wants to hear, and he's got a very he's got a great great ears for stuff. Anyway, Bob Rock called about that record, the first one, Sonic Temple, and asked if I'd come in and play. I thought, this will be great. I was a fan of the Cult. I love their records. And so I think we listened to a few of the demos, songs, and we were going to, Bob liked to sort of rehearse the songs and run things down before we actually started recording. So we would spend time just sort of playing through. I remember a couple of the demos thinking, these are fantastic. I don't know what they don't hear that they want to hear. But once Bob gets his hands on a drum sound, it changes everything. And he's so good at the big rock drum sound, big open sound. And he knows exactly what he wants to hear. And he's amazing. He's got such great ears. And so he had I think he had in his head a final sort of version of each song, what he wanted it to sound like. And that's what we did. We would just go in, and Jamie played bass. He was fantastic. And Billy on guitar. And, Ian was a trooper, man. He'd sing through every take. And I specifically remember doing Firewoman and thinking it's a big rock song with a very sort of R&B feel.
Yeah.
And Bob loved that. So we sort of went on that approach for a lot of those tracks. And, that was right in sort of my wheelhouse, that sort of four on the floor thing. Simple and basic, but it's all Bob. It was all Bob. The drum sound was all Bob. Sort of the ideas for where we went with the tracks was all Bob, and he made a great Cult record. I thought it was fantastic. I hear Firewoman comes on the radio in my car. I cannot believe how good it sounds, and what a great song it is. So, that was those were really fun sessions.
Yeah.
And Ceremony as well, with Richie Zito and Charlie Drayton, who's my hero. He's a great drummer, but he's a great bass player as well. So doing those tracks was really fun, too.
Let me ask you about working with different producers. I had a friend of mine who interviewed Bryan here in January, and he mentioned Mutt Lange and Bob Clearmountain, and Bryan's answer was, the A-Team. Right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about what Mutt brings to a session and what Bob brings to a session, because their success is undeniable, from Metallica to Def Leppard to whatever, to Shania Twain. But you, as a musician who's had to, and I don't want to not endure, but had to work with them, I guess. What do they bring that's different to each project, and why are they so successful?
Well, Bob, I'll start with Bob, I guess. Bob's got great ears, and he gets great sounds, and he's got great ideas for tracks, and things are very simple with Bob, so I wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for Bob Clearmountain. He made the drums for me, and the way I play, the drum sounds, the way those tracks sound in your car or on your turntable or whatever. They're the best drum sounds for me, and especially for the way I play. He really sort of honed in on that, and I love that about Bob. And he's fun to work with, and he's easy to work with. There's no pressure with him. You just go play, and he's happy with everything you do. Mutt Lange, I had nightmares about before I started working with Mutt. I was freaking out, because you hear these horror stories about drummers going into work with Mutt, and 3 days later they have a hi-hat track.
Yeah, I heard
for
that.
one song, right? So I was really nervous about working with Mutt, but we were in Jamaica. Bryan was working on Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman? Mm-hmm. So I flew to Jamaica to do the track, do a couple of tracks, but that was the song we were focused on. And Paco de Lucia was there, and he was there for a couple of days playing guitar. And they got all these great guitar tracks for him. And I'm sitting outside listening to the track thinking, this is going to take me if Paco de Lucia takes 3 days to get a guitar track, it's going to take me 2 weeks to get a drum track. And so I went in. We had the drums set up upstairs in the house, and the control room was sort of downstairs in the living room. We were watching each other via camera, little screens and cameras. So, okay, roll the track. So Mutt says, okay, here we go. So we roll the track, and I start playing, and I'm thinking immediately, this is just going to take forever. But I'll play. I'm playing. This is my job. This is what I do. So I played the track, and we finished the song, and there was dead silence for a few seconds. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go. We're going to start with a hi-hat, And I hear Mutt say, yeah, Mickey, man, I think you got it. So, of course, I thought he was joking.
Too much Jamaican rum.
Yeah, I went, okay. All right, so what do you want to do? He goes, no, man, you got it. I think it's good. Come on down with it. So I came downstairs, we listened to it, and he said, I need a little something here. And it was something on the outro or something. I saw a fill or something. So I went back upstairs. I played this little thing, a fill or something, and that was it. We were done. So I was literally done with the song in however long the song is. That's how long it took to get the drum track. And from that day forward, every track I played with Mutt Lange, we never did more than 2 takes of anything.
Wow.
And
guys in Def Leppard are very jealous of this point.
First of all, I love Mutt, and I love the way he works. I really thought it was going to be, these sort of long, drawn-out sort of sessions. He doesn't work that way. I think when he hears what he needs to hear from you and gets the thing he needs to layer all that stuff on top of, because he's amazingly good at layering and coming up with these incredible parts and these sort of sounds, and the vibe he gets is incredible. I loved working with Mutt, and I still would love to work more with Mutt. I can't say enough good things about him in the studio and how much fun he is to work with. But he liked everything I played, which, I don't know. I don't know why, I don't know how, but that's how it worked with Mutt. And I'm proud of those tracks.
Yeah.
Those drum tracks are great. And, it's a tribute to him and how he works. I was just fortunate enough to be able to do it, quickly and, without too much pain for everyone involved. But so I don't know if there's a difference between the two guys. They definitely have different approaches to how they work, but the results are the same. They're both very successful, and they get great tracks. They record great songs, and the final product, any Bob Clearmountain mix is ridiculous. You listen to any Mutt Lange song, and you just can't believe how good it is. So they're both great in their own.
Yeah, they know how to polish up a track. Let me go back to 1985 and Reckless. Reckless comes out. You played a little bit on it. Yeah. Pat Stewart plays a little bit on it.
Great.
Perhaps Jim Valens plays on it, maybe. Yeah. But you don't do the tour. I see the tour, and it's Pat Stewart. Was that a personal decision because of stuff going on at home? Was it a professional decision because of Hall & Oates? Why? Here's the big breakout album, and you're not on the breakout tour.
No, I was still working with Daryl and John, and, we were really busy. And I remember Bryan and I had this conversation a couple of times, like, Mick, we'd love to have you come out. And I kept saying, I would love to do that, but I'm committed here. I have, and we were really busy. Hall & Oates was just on fire from 81 to 87. We were just out there between touring and recording. I was never home, and I was just really busy. So I would love to have gone and played with Bryan live. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't commit to that, And who knew that record would be? I mean, I loved playing on Reckless and the tracks that I'm on. It was really fun, and I loved going to Little Mountain and recording there. It's one of my favorite studios. But I just could not commit full time to him
Right.
as much as I would have liked to have done that.
Ultimately, you became Bryan's drummer, though, right? From Into the Fire and Waking Up the Neighbors and 2019, you're here. What was the turning point, or where did you say, you know what, I'm going to go with the kid. Yeah. That Canadian kid's pretty good. I'm going to stick with him. Yeah. Where did that come into play?
Well, Daryl in 1986, or it might have been 87, I'm not sure, Daryl was going to go record a solo record. So Hall Oates was sort of done for a while. And I had a conversation with their manager about, sort of what the future was. So he said, if there's other stuff you want to do, if there are other things, just keep me informed as to what you're doing. But, when Daryl's ready, we'll probably get back together and do something. So I had some time. And Bryan called about the Into the Fire recordings, and he said, I've got these songs, and Pat's played on some stuff, and, maybe you want to come up to Vancouver and do some work. We're recording it at my house. So we recorded at his house in Vancouver. That was in the fall, I think, of 87. And I love that record. Into the Fire was so much fun. It's probably my favorite Adams record. And, during the sessions, during the recording, he said, look, if you're really not doing anything, I would love for you to come back out and do the tour, and, we'll take it from there. So I said, sure, because now I had the time, and I also had, I needed a job, obviously. I was doing a lot of session work, but it wasn't really sort of doing it for me. And it was, here's my chance to work with Bryan full time, So I was all excited. We were all excited about that. And that's what happened. So that was late 87. And I sort of committed, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
And he still has me. That's what he still calls me, is my point, which is nice. So,
well, I mean, in a sense, being Bryan Adams, he could call anybody he wants.
Yeah.
And he could go do solo albums and have 4 different guys. So it is a testament to your skill, but also I think his loyalty, because why change, if it ain't broke.
There's definitely a loyalty thing there, too. Also, I've been on all of his records since You Want It, You Got It, pretty much, I've been sort of the guy that shows up and does a lot of the tracking and a lot of it. So, I always thought of myself as sort of, Bryan's guy when he need, the go-to guy or whatever. And, that's a good feeling to be able to say that, that I get to work with him like I do, right. And that he calls and has that sort of faith in me to come out and give him what he needs to hear back there behind him. So, that's good.
And it's nice to see that he's still an active music maker.
Yeah.
Shine a Light's a great album, and it's a great tour. But we did allude to the Alice Cooper album, Hey Stoopid.
Yeah.
A lot of great players on that. We've got Slash that shows up on it, Huey McDonald from Bon Jovi, who's just phenomenal. And
he's my favorite guy. I love Huey. I love him to death. He's fantastic. Hugh McDonald is I love him. And we've done a few records together, and I can't say enough nice things about him and his playing. He's a great guy. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, but that's great. No, but talk to me about that, because there was that sort of period in 89, 90, 91 where you were doing a little bit of session work. Yeah. Talk to me about working with Alice and what he brings. Because he's a very different vocalist, a very different vocal style, certainly different than what Hall Oates is doing or what Bryan's doing, but one of the greatest. Yeah. Talk to me about that experience.
Well, Alice, I was nervous about that. We did that up at Bearsville in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
And
famous studio.
Yeah. So I went up, we rehearsed for a few days, and then we started tracking. And I've never met a funnier, nicer, sort of...
normal
guy, thank you. Because it's exactly what he is. He was very sort of, self-deprecating. He was so much fun. We spent the day laughing. And every once in a while we'd get a track done, But we had so much fun working on that record. And how those tracks came out like that, with us laughing through them all. I mean, we'd be tracking, literally, we'd be tracking, and I'm laughing so hard, I'm falling off the drum kit. He was so much fun to work with, and I just, it's one of the great sort of 10 days of my life, was working with Alice. I'll never forget it, and, I'm really glad that record did as well as it did, and I got to work with him. It was a big, gigantic thrill for me to work with him. He's one of my heroes.
Oh, really? Me too. Now, I know you do have sound checks, so I'll finish with this. Before the interview, I wrote Jim Valens, and I said, hey, my next interview is with Micky. And he said in the email that you are the greatest drummer he has ever worked with. So I'm not going to disagree. But how do you sort of look at it now? You have all the Hall Oates stuff, and you played on Private Eyes and Maneater, and you've done Bryan Adams and Another Day and Remembrance Day and all these great songs. How do you sort of take stock of your career, sort of, what I guess, almost 40 years in? How long have you been playing professionally? Since 78, 79?
Yeah, I would say,
So 40...
75 I started. Well, yeah, around 1975, I was in a band in Connecticut called the Scratch Band, and it was actually a paycheck every week. So professionally speaking. I was 15 when I did my first session. I got paid $25 to do a bank commercial.
Hey,
my mother, we loaded my Gretsch kit into my mother's Volkswagen. I don't know how we got it up there, and we drove up to the studio, and she dropped me off and waited the hour it was, and
right. That's
anyway,
what moms do, right?
Yeah. So yes, I've been playing a long time, and getting paid.
But to have somebody like Jim Valens say you're the greatest drummer he's ever worked with.
I mean, I'm probably the only other drummer Jim Valens has worked with, so he can get away with saying that. I love Jim Valens more than anybody, and he's such a great drummer. I mean, his career is incredible, and he taught me so much when I started working with him and Bryan. The demo tracks are if you could hear this stuff, you'd know what I was talking about. His playing is so beautiful and simple and groovy, and he's got just an amazing feel, and I love that. But he's a great guy on top of it. Yep. He's such a sweet guy. He's really, really wonderful, and it's always great to see him and hang with him. And I as far as the nice words from him, I have no idea what to say to that. I'm really lucky. I'm lucky. I got to work with all these great people over the years. I don't know how that happened. I wish I had the answer. I don't know. You're lucky. The phone rings. Would you come and play drums on this? And yes. Say yes to everything and go do it. And
do it well.
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't want to be the weak link in the chain. When you walk in the room, you don't want to be the guy that. I think Jeff Porcaro said it, and Jim Keltner might have said it as well. I did an interview years ago with Modern Drummer magazine, and they asked me about that. What's your big fear? And I always said, my big fear is that I'm going to screw up a session. Like, I'm going to walk in and not be able to do it. So the girl that was interviewing me, she started laughing, and I said, what's so funny? She said, well, Jim Keltner, Jeff Porcaro, and she named a bunch of these great drummers, and she said, they all say the same thing, that Jeff Porcaro said his big fear was that he's going to be in a session and they're going to know that he doesn't know what he's doing. These are the guys that are going to know that I have no idea what I'm doing here, right? So that's kind of how you feel when you walk into a room full of great players or any other players, So anyway, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I've had a career, but I love to play, and I'm really grateful that people call.
Yeah, and I'll suggest this, having interviewed a lot of rock stars, all the really successful ones, your Alice Coopers, and they're just really nice, down to earth, and I think not having an attitude and not being an ass is sort of what propels you to being accepted by everybody. Yeah, I
think it's true. I think more important than your playing is your sort of personality,
the attitude,
how you come off with other people. I've always tried to be, kind, polite, light.
Shine a light.
Yeah, exactly. you don't want to be the heavy guy in the room, and you don't want it dark and serious. And most of these people I've worked with are sort of the same way with their approach to how they make records and what they do. Alice Cooper being a perfect example. He's just funny, and nothing's that important. It's just let's have fun doing this, and let's make a great record, and it's all okay. Everything's okay. So,
yeah. And Hugh McDonald as well. I mean, everybody like that. They're just
Hugh's great.
He's the best. Anyway, we are at 30 minutes.
Okay.
I know you have sound check. Yeah. I could go on forever.
Me too. Thanks.
But we'll leave it at that.
All right.
And as we say in Montreal, merci.
You're welcome.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk.